How's it, guys? My name's Gus. I'm an addict.
Gus.
Yeah, I'm pretty nervous. Hey? I know something's wrong with me because I dive with sharks for a living, but put me in a room full of people and I absolutely shit myself. So yeah, please bear with me. I'll try to keep it as structured as I can. I do have quite a bit of memory loss, but yeah, so I'll work with what I can. I think a lot of people share about growing up. They had a sense of discomfort. Like quite didn't belong, and I relate a lot to that. And I remember from my earliest memory, I always had an overwhelming sense of fear, overwhelming sense of insecurity. From the first time I went to school, I shat myself. I didn't quite know where that fear came from. I didn't know it was fear. I just always saw myself separate from other people, and I've carried that out throughout my life. So I found myself at school, I was behaving differently than other children. I'd be very disruptive, always looking for attention, always causing drama, and to me that was normal. I didn't know that that's not the way to behave and stuff, and I always, from a young age, looked for situations to blame my behavior on, or a spot of bad luck, or just people don't like me or whatever, but I could never realize that there was something wrong with my thinking. It took a long time for me to come to terms with that. Anyways, as a result from all of that stuff, I was put on medication from a very early age, and it's quite a big part of my story. I was medicated from the age of 7. I was put on Ritalin, and I think that's kind of where the mentality started, where I realized, something outside of myself can change the way I feel, change the way I think. Even at the time, I didn't kind of realize that that's what was happening, but it played a part later on. So yeah, my entire life through school was very disruptive, very chaotic, lots of fear. I struggled to make friends. I struggled in social situations. I just couldn't adapt and evolve like other kids could. There was something wrong with me. And towards the beginning of high school, I was always looking for attention from people, always looking for affirmation. It's also a very big thing in my story, because of the fear, because of the insecurity. I need other people to tell me that I'm good enough. So anyways, I tried doing athletics and stuff, and I happened to be good at it. Broke records. I did really, really well. Got very far with that, and a lot of affirmation came my way, from other people, from other schools, and I started to become popular, which was always something that I chased, But with that came more fear, came more insecurity, and yeah, that didn't last very long, I think for about 3 years after that, I started looking for other things, and I was about 14 years old when I had my first drink, and I talk quite a bit about alcohol because it's the same. It's a drug for me, it plays a big part of my story, and it's kind of how it was in the last few days, a year ago. So anyways, I remember clearly, vividly remember the first time I used a substance, that fear, that inadequacy, it just went away, and it was replaced by wholeness. I felt comfortable in my own skin. My mind quietened down, because I'd always obsess, what are other people thinking about me? Am I responding correctly in the situation? Am I saying the right thing to get the right amount of approval? And that would just be the noise in my head constantly. But after I had the substance, that went away. My mind quietened down, and I could socialize without having to think about socializing, which was a miracle for me. And yeah, that was it. A lot of people share about, certain times in their lives where they were successful and did all that stuff, and went to university and all. That wasn't me. From the moment where I started using a substance, it was just a path to absolute decimation. And it started off fairly simple, acceptable, drinking on weekends, all that kind of stuff that teenagers do, and it was great. I actually started to enjoy life, and it was a party. It was really great. Made a lot of friends, probably not the best friends, but I made friends, which was also a massive thing for me. And from that, I started dwelling into other stuff, because now with my curiosity and my dire need for acceptance from other people, I see other people are smoking something, and I want to be accepted into the group, so I want to smoke that as well. And yeah, that went on for 3 years, and within 3 years, I got into a relationship when I was in high school, and that lasted for 3 years. And the amount of damage that I caused in that relationship, looking at it now, I think back, especially when I was going through my steps and going through step 4 stuff and amends and that kind of stuff, I only started to realize how my behavior was centered in addiction from young already, and that kind of stuff's kind of built up over the years. So there were consequences very early on. That relationship was destroyed. I'd already caused damage within my family. A lot of hurt, a lot of pain, and I ended up going to a rehab when I was 18. That was the first time I went into a rehab, and then I was in the cycle. My father, he's an alcoholic. He's been sober for many years. And I kind of grew up in the fellowship. But I never really knew what it was about. The first time I was exposed to an NA meeting was at one of the treatment centers I went to. And still then, I was like, okay, well, I don't have a problem. There's nothing wrong with me. I just got bust. You know what I mean? That's all that went wrong. And I remember sitting in the rehab because, by that time I'd already started onto heavier substances and it was completely out of control. But I remember saying that, amphetamines are my problem. When I leave here, I'm going to have an ice cold draft. You know what I mean? I'm not like the rest of you guys. Needless to say, I didn't get to that draft. I just went straight back to amphetamines, and that carried on for years. I never had a point where I finished school or I achieved something or did anything. It was just always me chasing that sense of ease and comfort brought by a substance, and as a result, caused a lot of damage from that. More rehabs. I ended up going to jails. I got a criminal record before I was 20. By the time I was 21, I ended up, my parents already, they reached a state of hopelessness. They were just watching their son deteriorate at a young age. So they did the only thing they knew how to do, and that was to have me sectioned. So I ended up going to a really shit place for a year, and I got up to some dodgy stuff there, But anyway, so I thought, by this time I kind of knew something was wrong, you know what I mean? Because I'm turning 21, the people I was in school with, my friends, I kind of stopped all this kind of stuff, and they're starting to focus on their lives. They're continuing their educations, they're moving overseas, they're doing something with their lives, and I still just want to party, I still want to get on. And then I knew something wasn't quite right, but never did I really have a problem, It's just I needed to learn how to control my substance use. Anyway, so I was sectioned to this place and spent a year there. And the first time I kind of hit an overwhelming sensation of hopelessness was when I left there. The place was very orientated around religion and physical annihilation, if that makes any sense. So I left there very resentful, extremely resentful, and I lasted about 2 weeks on the outside, and then I relapsed. I started putting needles in my arms. And the progression got so bad because what I was able to do over a series of weeks, over a series of months, I was now doing immediately. I was straight back in the hole where I'd normally get myself out of, go to rehab, clear it up a bit, but I was just straight back into that. And I had some part of me had a sincere desire to break free from that nightmare. Anyways, went through withdrawals and all that stuff, and I had no family around me, filled with resentment, filled with hatred, and I tried to take my own life, and I spent a few months in hospital as a result of that. And that experience scared me, it really scared me, and I started to attend meetings after that, but never really connected with me being insane, the way, that I, as an addict, I'm insane. There's something wrong with my thinking. I never connected to that. I never connected to it being around behavioral stuff. That didn't make any sense to me whatsoever. It was always the drugs and the alcohol that was the problem, and I needed to find a way to either control that or get it out of my life, and needless to say, that didn't work. So I ended up doing what I always do, stay clean for a bit, and then I'll become restless, irritable, discontent. And the only solution I had to that was to pick up, to use. And then the cycle would start over again. I'd hurt people, I'd destroy opportunities, and just leave a whole lot of wreckage behind me, And when this started happening, I started thinking, okay, well, it's this country, you know what I mean? Like, South Africa's got a problem with drugs, you know, and I need to get out of South Africa. So I decided to go to Mozambique because it made sense to me. You know, I mean, white beaches, crystal clear waters, turtles. You know, that's where I need to go because that's where I'll find a sense of ease and comfort. I was there for about a week and I got stuck in a crack den in Maputo. You know, and I was blown away because I mean I had an opportunity to go there with a dive center and start a really good life for myself. You know, but I remember spending New Year's in a crack den, and again, then a realization came that something's not quite right. You know, I came here to get away from all of that chaos, and here I am, straight in the middle of it. You know, like how does this keep happening? You know, a couple of months went by, and that's the first time I went up to the house on the hill. You know, I went to my boss. I said to him, "Listen, I've got a problem. You know, I can't get sober, and it's progressively getting worse. By this time, my body started taking a knock from all the different substances I was putting into my body as well. And so I ended up going to a 12-step treatment center, which was a first for me. I remember they had these things called concern groups, which I was not happy about. And the owner of the treatment center was still did concern groups then. Yeah, let me tell you. Anyway, so the one night I was talking about euphoric recall and all that kind of stuff, you know what I mean? I didn't know. And the next day there's a concern group, and it was Brian, Keith, and all of them, you know what I mean? And Keith was going off at me, you know, telling me, he's like, yeah, you know, you're a failure. You can't even use drugs properly. You're a failure. You're just a big baby. He was going off at me, you know. And I remember kind of sitting there with my legs up in the chair, rocking back and forth, you know. And yeah, I like to think I'm all hardcore with my big boots and my nose ring and everything. You know, I'm rocking back and forth, getting my ass handed to me, you know. And then I learned really quickly how things work. And there was a part of me that was attracted to what I saw around there. You know, the fellowship, people living lives that I wanted to live, but without the drugs and stuff. But still, at that point, I mean, I was 23. For me to accept that there's something wrong with my thinking, that I'm insane, was, I mean, come on. No one wants to really accept that they're mentally not okay, you know. So yeah, that I just completely discarded. Then there were parts of the program that didn't make sense to me either. I mean, having to be honest. I mean, come on. You know, most of my good stories are completely dishonest, you know. So slowly I had to start exposing stuff, and, you know, but there were one or two secrets that I wasn't willing to expose, you know. So I started working through the steps, stuff about higher power, this and that. I was willing to kind of grasp that stuff, and, you know, it was nice. You know, then came the step 4, and yeah, I put a lot of stuff in there. You know, really a lot of stuff, but there was one or two things I was not willing to get honest about. And my thinking told me, okay, well, you know, you're clearing out the majority of all of this stuff. It's perfectly fine for you to hold on to this. You know, you don't need to tell anyone, you'll be okay. And every day after that, I was not okay, because I knew that I wasn't being honest. You know, people would share in the Just for Today meetings, we had meetings about honesty and about getting rid of that last little stinky sandwich in the back of the corner and stuff. And I knew that's exactly what I was doing, you know. And through being clean for a while, I started getting a bit of a conscience, you know. And it bothered me. It really bothered me, because a part of me knew that I need to completely hand myself over to the program in order to recover. But again, I wasn't believing that I'd be fine. Left treatment there, completely dishonest, and ended up going to the halfway house. And by this time, because I hadn't worked a proper program or set a foundation for sanity, my thinking and everything after that was completely insane. You know, so I got into a relationship with a woman who was already in a relationship, who was from Belgium. I mean, I told myself that it's gifts of recovery, you know, and it wasn't. It really wasn't. You know, but that's I believed it. I honestly believed that. I believed that I didn't need to tell my sponsor about this. You know, I'm sober now. I need to be a man, and I need to make my own decisions. And yeah, it didn't work out too well. You know. So, anyways, a bit of pain came from that, and the opportunity came up for me to go to Europe. You know, and me being who I am, engulfed in fear, and you know, I thought, okay, well, maybe it's just a change of scenery. I need to get out of Africa. You know. So, needless to say, I went over to Europe, and I spent 3 months there drunk, completely drunk. I mean, I'd wake up in the morning, a mouthful of Xanax and tequila. That was how I started my day. I started my day in complete and utter fear. You know, all the variables were different. It was a new place. Anything anyone would actually be excited about, you know, but I wasn't. I was just engulfed in fear, and I needed a substance to take that away. I caused a lot of damage there as well, you know, and it's a recurring thing, because every time I would want to just change the way I felt, just change the way I thought, I ended up causing irreversible amounts of damage in people's lives around me, in all my relationships. You know, I caused a lot of damage. And again, it took me a long time to come to terms with what I was actually doing. Fast forward a year, you know, I kind of been humbled a bit by the experience, because at that point, alcohol was never my problem either, you know, but it was a problem. And so I came back a little more humble, a little more willing. And, you know, the treatment center allowed me to come back, and I really put my all into it, you know, and I share about this quite often. You know, I got honest about stuff. I followed suggestions. You know, I did everything I was needed that was asked of me to do. You know, and I gained a bit of sanity from that. But as time went on, you know, the fear started calling in. I thought about, well, maybe I shouldn't have, like, you know, that relationship. I mean, it's like, how do I know now? Because my sponsor suggested that I leave the insane toxic relationship. Why? I wouldn't know. You know, but I believed, okay, now if I'm working a program, and I'm practicing principles, and I'm changing who I am, how do I know that she won't change as a result of me changing? All right. Fair enough. The thinking sound, you know. Problem was, I never spoke to my sponsor about it. So I got back into the relationship, and then pain, lots and lots of pain. And only then did I get honest about my sponsor after the experience, you know, which was something that I did a bit differently. Before, I would just kind of wing it, you know, and go on self-fall and try and control and fix the situation. But anyways, I exposed it with my sponsor. And I worked through that kind of stuff, you know. In the end, the relationship didn't work out, and I had to walk away. By that time, I was 10 months sober. Also, the suggestion was to start a relationship for a year. I lasted 4 months, which, yeah, I haven't done again. And, you know, so I had a bad accident in the diving industry, so I couldn't dive for a while. And then again, that fear, a lot of fear. Ended up going to Cape Town, you know, new fellowship, new job, new environment. And at that time, I threw myself completely into the fellowship. You know, I started doing a lot of, I started getting sponsees, I started doing a lot of service, doing a lot of meetings and stuff. And still then sincerely had a desire to just better my life, but still never connected with the fact that I'm insane. You know, that never came into the picture at all. And it was about 18 months to 2 years. I can't exactly remember when, you know. I started doing really well in the job. You know, it was very prestigious, very glamorous, you know, big events, chopper flights, all that kind of stuff, which isn't, I don't think it's good for an addict's ego, you know. But I was engulfed in it. I started to enjoy the perks of money, you know. I felt good about myself. I got affirmation from people, you know, and I ended up meeting a new girl who was a marine biologist, whatever, and then the fear hit me, you know. I can't tell her parents that I never finished school. I can't let them know that I'm an addict, you know. I can't let them know that I have a criminal record, because then all of a sudden they're not going to accept me, and if they don't accept me, I'm going to lose this person. If I lose this person, what's my life going to be? Who am I going to be without these variables in my life, you know? So the fear started coming back hectically, and I try to control the outcome of everything, you know. Slowly, and I mean, the most important thing is I never got honest with the stuff about my sponsor, you know, which is also a big mistake that I always made. You know, the willingness to completely be honest with my sponsor or with another addict about what's going on for me is, it's invaluable, you know, and I never really learned that until it was too late. So yeah, I try to control the outcome of things, and try to change careers and chase money, and started becoming dishonest. You know, I stopped doing step 11s because I knew, okay, well, I can't do a step 11, and now I'm going to, you know, no dishonesty. There's no point in me doing it if I know I'm going to be dishonest, you know what I mean? So that can just go out the window. That way my conscience will be a little bit better. And already then, you know, my thinking then was sound, because I still believed that I was going to be okay, you know. And through little bits of behavior, fear, not exposing the stuff, I didn't relapse immediately. It took many months before I actually picked up a substance, you know, because the progression of the insanity took hold. And by the time I picked up, I had absolutely no defense, you know, because I'd stopped going to meetings. I cut my sponsor out, all of that stuff, and just tried focusing on the materialistic variables of my life, and controlling those things so that I could maintain who I thought I needed to be and get the affirmation from people. And at that time I had everything. I had a good job, I had trust and respect from the fellowship, from my family. I had friends. I'd made some big amends by then. I had everything I thought I needed to have, in order to stay sober. And in the middle of all of that, I picked up, and I really, from that relapse, and that was quite a few years ago, I just went right through the progression. Because throughout my life, I was always able to kind of pull out when the consequences became a lot. I've had a few bottoms in my life. Consequences, losing friends, losing relationships, losing work, or health stuff, all that kind of stuff I've had before, and that's been a motivating factor for me to go into a rehab or look for help. But this time, I was tired, and I knew that it was, because in my head, I tried working the program, I tried going to meetings, I tried different stuff, moving around to different countries, I tried medications, I tried all of those things, different religions and that, and I just believed that this was it. I gave myself, I surrendered to that I'm going to die from drug addiction, that there's no way out for me. I will never get sober, and I'll never be able to live a semi-sane life, and it was the first time in my life where I just used for blackout. I had a few overdoses, and I just mixed anything I could find, pharmaceuticals, alcohol, drugs, and that was it. Like I said, I ended up completely alone, completely alone. And after a few years, I remember waking up the one morning and just screaming out, why? I couldn't understand how I was so incapable of getting my shit together. It's just, I had absolutely no ability, no power, no will left. I couldn't get out of bed, to even try. And that was a massive thing for me. Also, in that moment, with being high off my kites and being completely mentally obliterated, I realized what I was doing to my family. I realized how alone I was. I realized how painful and what a nightmare this is. And then the hopelessness sunk in. Maybe I'm not going to ever come right. And that really scared the shit out of me. So I'd always had the resources to run to treatment centers and that kind of stuff. People were always willing to help me. But at this time, I had exhausted all resources. I had no family left that was willing to help me. I had no friends left that would want to do anything with me. And like I said, it was complete hopelessness. And I reached out to the treatment center that took me in previously, and them being addicts like myself showed me something that I can't put into words. Unconditional love. I mean, I owed the owner so much money already, from taking me there on deals previously, and I tried getting to NA meetings. Don't get me wrong, I tried getting there. The problem was that I couldn't stay sober, or I couldn't stay awake. I get to a meeting, I kind of pass out, drool all over myself, and then someone would just kind of wake me up after the meeting, Or I'd stop off at the dealer before I get to a meeting. You know what I mean? I needed to be completely removed out of society in order to recover. That's just how it progressed for me. And the owner said to me, I said to him, I'm not going to make it. I'm going to die. I can't live this way anymore. I cannot do it. And that was the first time in my life I had checked myself into a rehab. Where I realized I had a problem, that no one's going to rescue me out of this. And I'm going to have to do things I've never done before. Anyway, so there was no argument, there was no, you owe me money or this and that, it's just unconditional love. He told me to get on a plane and to come. My life was more important than anything else. And I'm very grateful for that today, So the first couple of weeks in treatment, I honestly believed that I was going to die. I came in really bad. I had internal bleeding, my teeth were all brittle, but I wasn't okay, and I was in and out of hospital. And it was cool because I had people from the fellowship come to me and bring meetings into the hospital to come and help me, and I had a lot of support. But just the sober realization of where I'd ended up, it was ice cold, and with that realization, with the hopelessness, I came to terms with my insanity, because I looked at how my life had progressed, how getting clean, relapsing, getting things, relapsing, building up things, relapsing, everything I thought I needed throughout my life and everything I needed to do in order to get a perfect life, I had those opportunities, I had those things, everything was in place at certain times, but I kept picking up, and the realization that it's my thinking. I can't trust my head, because when my head tells me that I don't need a sponsor, I don't need to work steps, I don't need to go to meetings, or I don't need to be honest, I don't need to be open-minded, I don't need to practice principles in all my affairs. When I realized when my head told me that was when the time I picked up, because I believed I was okay. So for the first time I surrendered myself to the steps. Also a big thing that I used to do last time was I always used to be that guy who would share every meeting. I would present so well because I'd learned the steps really well. I kind of knew what I was talking about. I just couldn't apply it in my life. So I'd always be that guy who came up with the nice shares. I'd always be that guy who was over willing to be of service, not for the sincere desire to be of service, but hey, look at me, I'm doing service. That was always my motive for doing things was, hey, look at me. And I didn't do that this time. I sat quietly and I listened. They've got at the treatment center, they had these on Saturday mornings, Joe McQueenie. And as monotonous as his voice was, in previous times I'd fall asleep or I'd crack jokes or play around, whatever. I sat and listened. I sat and listened to what he had to say, and how he explained the steps, and especially around the insanity of the mind of an addict. And I started to grasp that and identify what he was talking about throughout my life. I learned how to be honest, especially in my step 11s as well. There would always be something where I justify that, okay, I don't need to put this in, I'll just deal with this, or I don't need to expose that. I realized that my fear is a result of insane thinking. So in order for me to get sanity, I need to expose the insanity, if that makes any sense. And with that willingness and with the willingness to change the way I behaved as well. I didn't get into relationships. I stayed away from women. I think my longest conversation was with one of the girls who was at the house, and it wasn't a good conversation. It was basically an FU conversation, and that was it. You know what I mean? I made a lot of effort to stay away from the things I had done before. Because I realized, I'd get especially from relationships, it's affirmation, it's a whole thing, recovery out the window, and there I'm gone, So I've really stayed away from that. I did the steps to the best, the written work, to the best of my ability. I've done it many times before, but it was difficult for me, especially with my health and my mind clearing up and stuff. It took me a while to get through this stuff, to start remembering things, and as things went along, I'd expose more and more to my sponsor. Also, something I never really did was speak to my sponsor about where I'm at, or expose to those around me what's going on for me, the fear, because I always felt that if I had to go and tell people that I'm such a fearful person, then everyone's going to know I'm inadequate. Again, thinking, completely insane. So, I've learned how to do these things, just to keep my life tidy. And also, the biggest thing was that I'd always overcomplicated the program. I always overthought everything, and it's pretty simple. All I've done was wake up, get on my knees, do the best I can throughout my day to not be an arsehole, to practice integrity in everything I do, because like I said, a big thing was for me to show people, look at me, I'm sweeping the driveway, you know what I mean? I need some brownie points or a round of applause, I'm really working a program here. It was learning how to do the anonymous things, when people aren't around, that integrity for my soul, really, that was something I learned how to practice, and I still try that today. When I'm at work and in all the things I do, I try and practice integrity, I try to practice honesty and that kind of stuff, I try to share what's going on for me with mates, I try to do as many meetings as I can, and I try to do the program to the best of my ability. Come evening, I get on my knees and I express my gratitude for the God of my understanding for allowing me to stay sober another day. And then I do the same thing the next day. You know what I mean? That's literally all it's been. I've been very blessed because when I was at the treatment center, I couldn't really afford treatment. And spoke to the owner said to me, all right, so we'll give you treatment, but you're going to work it off. And I always had a problem with, I can conceptualize a higher power and a God. I can conceptualize it, it's great. But I could never really grasp the impact it would have on my life. Anyway, so I owed him a ridiculous amount of money, and I believed and I knew I was going to be there for a long time, which is fine because my experiences through the nightmare gave me the willingness to do what I needed to do. So I said thank you, and I started working there. Humbling job, very humbling job. With its own challenges, but I got up and I just did what I needed to do every day until I was there for 11 and a half months, and the one day he called me in and said to me, okay, listen, you've done the best you could here, and I need you to know that 80% of your debt is cleared. And then, look, it's a lot of money that I owed him, and he said to me that, we square. And I didn't know what to say, you know what I mean? I didn't expect that, because when I was called into the office, I was like, oh, I'm in trouble, here we go, And that unconditional love he gave me in the beginning, he gave to me again. And I was completely blown away by it, And there's something in the office that stands out. It's that honor especially those who show you love at your lowest point, because God uses those people to bring you back to life, And that still has stuck with me in my head. Because I went from a state of complete hopelessness. I believed that I wasn't going to come right. Maybe I will for a few months, but then the same thing's just going to happen. That's always happened. I'm going to get pulled back into that nightmare, and it's just going to be decimation and darkness all over again. But slowly over the months of just following a simple program of doing what I needed to do, hope started coming back. Slowly started coming back. The days started piling on. Experiences started piling on. My family started getting in contact with me again. I had some amazing experiences with my family, some really emotional, gut-crunching moments with my parents, And all of this kind of stuff is a blessing. I've got a lot of friends in my life today. Because the way it ended was I was extremely lonely, absolutely lonely. That cold loneliness that's none of the rest of you can understand, And today I don't have that. I have friends. My family's in my life, and I've got a sane, healthy gratitude for that stuff, not something I had before. And, I've also, with not finishing school and all that kind of stuff, I thought, okay, well, I'm 30 years old, I didn't finish school, I've barely got my health, I'm pretty screwed, I'm sweeping driveways and picking up shit and painting and, this is it, this is what it's come to, But even in those moments, I still found acceptance. Well, as long as I'm sober, I'm clean, and I'm not harming anyone, so be it. But that changed over time. Anyway, so like I was saying, the owner he told me that it's time for me to move out. It's time for me to get a job. It's time for me to, start living life. And I was very fortunate because of the diving industry I was in, and I wasn't able to work in that. I went to a dive center and I started diving again. Being out in the water, like I said, I dive with sharks. I've got sharks around me the whole time, and it makes me realize how lucky I am, and I've got so much gratitude for having a bit of stability in my life today. I've got to learn. I was institutionalized for quite a while. I was up at the house for quite a while, so working on amends and all that kind of stuff is still to come. You know what I mean? I've literally just landed out in the real world, So now I've got to learn how to socialize with people who aren't addicts. I've got to learn how to actually work. You know what I mean? Like work and not complain about it. I've got to now learn how to match life with my program. Get to meetings, phone my sponsor, plug into the fellowship. Because very quickly I become overwhelmed by work. Because I want to excel, I want to do good. And very quickly do I become burnt out, if that makes sense, Like I was sharing with someone earlier, it'll be a long day, hard work, did really well. But if I leave in half an hour now, I can make it to a meeting, but I need to be up at 3 tomorrow. Let me just go to bed, you know what I mean? And that go to bed becomes a go to bed the next night, the next night, the next night. Next thing I know, it's been a couple of days without a meeting, a couple of days without friends. And slowly the insanity starts to return. I get that sense of discomfort. I get that overwhelming anxiety and fear. And then immediately I know I need to get back onto the path. And I try to go to meetings and I expose the stuff and I call my sponsor and it's been really. It's like I said, I can't share too much about my recovery because it's just started for me, you know. But I think the most powerful thing that I can really share with anyone was my experience around going from hopelessness to having hope, you know, from believing that I was going to die from addiction to now getting excited about diving with sharks. I mean, it's two opposite ends of the spectrum, you know. And the recipe for that process was very, very simple. You know, wake up in the morning, hand my will and my life over, try not to be an arsehole, be of service where I can, whether it's in the fellowship or whether it's in my work environment or with friendships with people around me. Practice these principles in all my affairs. So I try to be of service wherever I can. You know, when I don't want to do something is when I know I need to go and do it. You know, and come at the end of the day, I inventory my day and I say thanks to the God of my understanding for allowing me to live another day. You know, so I think I'll end it there. Thanks for the meeting, guys.